Shalom, Mishpaka, and welcome to Fridges in the Kitchen. Today I'm going to be showing you how to make two homemade loaves of bread. First off, we want to start out with 2 cups of water, and you want to make sure the temperature is around 110 degrees to allow the yeast to fully activate, as if it's too cold or too warm, it will not work. Now you want to add in about 1 tablespoon of sugar, and you want to give it a nice little stir in order to have the water nice and sweet. So when we add our 2 1/4 teaspoon of yeast, it will activate. As the way it works, the sugary water, the yeast will eat it and it will cause it to activate the yeast. Now you want to let it sit for a couple of minutes, and after you have let it sit, you're going to start seeing these bubbles forming from the top. As you can see here, this is how you know your yeast is alive. Now, if the bubbling doesn't happen, that could be either two things. First off, the water temperature may be either too hot or too cold, or the yeast is dead. If this happens, I will suggest for you to go ahead and redo your yeast, as you want to make sure it's fully active before you start the bread, because this is what allows the bread to rise. Now what we're going to do is we're going to get a mixing bowl, and we're going to add in our water. Right here I have a kneading trough, and it will give you a lot of space in order for you to get in there, get your hands dirty, and work that dough. Now I'm adding the remainder 3 tablespoons of sugar. I'm also going to add in 3 tablespoons of oil, and then I am going to add in 2 tablespoons of salt. Now with this time, you are able to add in as much sugar, as much salt as you would like, depending on how you like your bread. If you want more of a sweeter bread, then go ahead and add some sugar. Or if you prefer less sugar, depending on your dietary needs, go for it. This is the time where you want to add in any flavoring before you add your flour. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my flour. To begin with, I'm going to add around 3 to 4 cups of flour. And some people usually sift their flours. I personally don't. I just go ahead and throw it in there. And I'm going to give it a nice little mix in order to incorporate all those flavors, and to also ensure that every part of my dough tastes exactly the same. And don't be afraid the flours to go everywhere, for it to get dirty. This is a fun process for you to do with your mishpachah. Involve the kids. They will love to see, I'm sure they will love to see how homemade bread is made. And as you can see here, the dough is very sticky and very wet. So I'm going to go ahead and add in my remainder flour, which is 2 cups of flour. So as you can see, there's a ratio of 5 cups of flour to 2 cups of warm water. And this is where the fun starts happen. You're going to go in there, make sure it's very well mixed, and this is where you're going to start to knead the dough. And like I said before, it will get messy, but don't worry. It's a beautiful process, and at the end, it's going to be all worth it. We have to remember, Mishpachah, that Yah speaks to us and tells us that we are his living temple. And we already know that Yah does not dwell in uncleanness. And if we're putting in preservative in our body, and if we're putting in ingredients in our body that we are not aware of, then we are unclean, because we already know how the world is. We already know how they are going to try to hide unclean ingredients into the food that we buy in the grocery. So this is a great way for you not only to have fresh homemade bread, but also to ensure that you and your family are eating clean, are eating righteously, because at the end of the day, we want to know that Yah is willing to dwell inside of us as his living temple. Again, don't be afraid to get in there. Don't be afraid to get your hands dirty and involve the kids. Have them play around with the dough. Have them knead the dough. It's nice for also for them not only to learn the process but also to feel it. And the more you feel it and the more you work the dough, the more pliable it becomes, the softer it becomes, because you're actually breaking in the gluten that is inside the dough. And if your dough feels too sticky or too dry, this is when you will add a little bit more water or a little bit more flour, depending on what you need. And make sure you scrape off the sides. You want to get every little bit of flavor that you have in there. And Mishpachah, we all know we want our food well flavored. So this is the part that you want to experiment. You want to taste your dough. You want to see how it feels. If you feel like maybe you need to add a little bit more sugar, go ahead and sprinkle it on and just keep on kneading. And as you can see, the dough feels a little bit tough, but that's just because it needs to be kneaded a little bit more. And then I could also tell by the way it looks and the way it feels that it feels a little bit dry. As you can see, the little cracks that are in the dough. So what I'm going to do, instead of adding water, because sometimes if I add too much water, then I'm going to need to add more flour. I'm just going to go ahead and add a little bit of oil, around maybe half a tablespoon of oil, just to give them that smoothness that the dough needs. And again, we're going to go and incorporate that oil in there and knead it right back up until we get the consistency that we're looking for. And that way the dough also won't crack as well. And you're going to start noticing the difference of the dough the more you keep kneading. The same way as Yah refine us, we are refining the dough. We're beating it, we're working it, we're putting our hands in there, we're feeling it until it becomes the perfect dough mix for you. It's becoming softer, it's becoming pliable, and I know that my kneading process is almost done. And then we're going to start the resting process. Now, once you have kneaded enough and it feels smooth to the touch, you're gonna see that it starts becoming airy. And once you touch in some holes in there, you're going to see how it pretty much just kind of bounces back when you touch the dough. And here I am pretty much testing the dough, looking at the dough, making sure it is to the consistency that I want right before I go ahead and cover it. And I'm going to let it rest for at least 1 hour, depending on your day goes. Go ahead and let it rest for longer. Your dough should double up in size. That's how you know you have a successful dough. Because again, from the beginning, how the yeast ate up the sugar, that's how we know the yeast is activated, and that's how we know that the yeast is going to double in size. Now, what I'm going to do is I am going to put the dough into a nice clean flour surface, and I am not going to deflate it because as I'm rolling it, it's going to remove all those air bubbles in there. I'm going to break the dough in half. It's going to part ways, and we're going to work one dough at a time. I am going to go ahead and shape it into a rectangle, because when I go ahead and roll it with the rolling pin, I want to maintain that rectangle shape, because you're going to see at the end how it becomes this beautiful, warm, homemade loaf that will go perfect with any type of meal that you would like to have. Mishpachah, Shabbat. Do it for Shabbat prep so your family can have a nice bread to eat on Shabbat or on any given day. And as you can see, I am rolling it out as thin as I possibly can make it while maintaining the shape that I need in order for it to be the right length and the right width for the bread that I want. And if you're new to this, don't let it discourage you. Just keep working on it. Keep trying because the more you do it, the better it's going to be and the better it's going to taste. What we're going to do now is we're going to take the edge and we're going to roll it. Roll it all the way towards the other end. And you want to pinch the edges to ensure that your loaf is going to maintain its composure, maintain its texture, and that way it will not open up as you are baking it in the process. And it's just little small pinches. You don't need for it to be hand heavy. Small pinch will do. And you can see the shape taking form. Now you're going to flip it upside down and you want to make sure you flour it very well. That way it does not stick to the pan that you are baking it in. You could bake it in a sheet pan. You can make it in a bread pan. You can make it in any type of surface that you could put into the oven. And as you see, it's perfect length for the pan that I was using. That's why I wanted to keep the rectangle shape. And I'm going to go ahead and put that to the side. And I'm going to grab the other piece of dough and I am going to repeat the process. Now, mishpachah, please let me know if you tried this recipe, what you liked and what you didn't like about it. If you added any other flavoring, if you included your kids, your husband, your significant other. Please let me know in the comment section below. I would love to hear all the wonderful adventures that you guys had with this recipe and how you made it to tailor to your family needs. In here, I'm in a different angle so you guys could see the width of the dough and how thinly I rolled it onto the table. Nice and neat, even thickness. You want even thickness. And we're going to go and roll out the edges all the way in. And don't forget to pinch the ends, the sides, the bottom, because it does make a difference. Mishpachah, it makes all the difference. Sprinkle some flour. And then we're going to put it back into our pan. And you can see the dough already starting to take shape. As you can see, when I touch it, it springs back. It doesn't indent. That means there's good airflow in there and is ready for it to be baked. Now what we're going to do before we start that baking process is covering up, and we're going to let it rest for another hour, 2 hours, depending on how much time that you have, and the bread will double up in size as you see here. It's airy. It looks beautiful. And now we're going to walk over to the oven. That's our 400 degrees. And we're going to bake it for around 12 to 15 minutes until you see that beautiful golden brown color on top. And here we have it, mishpachah, homemade fresh bread made by yours truly for you and your family to enjoy. Now we're going to cut it up and see what it looks like on the inside. Look at the thickness. Look at the dough. As you can see, the pinches had no effect to it because as it baked together. And let's take a look inside. Here you have it, Mishpachah. Look at the rolls, look at the steam, look at the fluffiness. Just nice, straight out of the oven. Yah, deliciousness. Until next time, I pray to Yah that you have enjoyed this video. Shalom.